Shalom, it's Chris with the Word in the Way, also known as Chris with firstcenturychristianity.net. Our assembly has two names. It's a long story. Email me if you want to know why. Today's podcast message broadcast is called Evangelical Atheism, Spreading the Bad News. And the title is something that is a phrase that I've used for a long time, a long, long, long time. But the subtitle, Spreading the Bad News, is something that I did get off a friend many years ago. So that one's not an original thought of my own. And this comes out, and this is coming up because I post these things all over the internet, as you guys all know, because you're hearing it. And so you got it from somewhere, whether you got it from, hopefully you get it from firstcenturychristianity.net, because the more traffic we get there, the more prevalent the website is, the more people searching for the truth can find the truth. But if you picked it up off of, off of one of the social media sites or wherever, it's a blessing, and please like and share these messages. But wherever I share this stuff every week, without fail, there's a couple of just evangelical atheists who come in and they defile everything I post with comments that have nothing even to do with the topics whatsoever, because the website has the word Christ in it. It's got the word Christianity in it. Almost said that like the church lady on Saturday Night Live back in the day. And these guys just don't like that. They don't like it. So even on the article I wrote about the homeschooling, where I said, guys, this one isn't even about religion, then they went off the word homeschooling and why that's bad. And I'm like, you guys, right? So I thought that maybe it's time to put out an actual message refuting atheism, because that's what these guys are always wanting, to drag you into a fight, to try to humiliate you, or to try to find something wrong with what you believe, because they believe there's no God, and they're out there trying to convince everybody that there is no God. They are literally evangelical atheists. And so I'm putting this out. This one's not going to be in print because I don't want anybody to be able to copy and paste. I want these folks to have to listen to what I'm going to say, because I'm calling them out. And the rest of you get to benefit from me calling them out. So, and there's a fork in the road here, and we're going to close with this same theme. But if we're wrong, if those of us who believe in God, believe the planet's created, believe everything's created, and we believe in an afterlife, if that's not true, then what have we lost? If nothing, all we've done is wasted time. We've spent our lives behaving properly and trying to encourage other people to do the same. So if we're wrong and there is nothing, and we get to the end of the road and we just die, then what have we done? We've made the world a better place. And that's all you could hope for, right? All you could hope for at the end of an atheistic life is to have contributed to society so that your legacy can live on, because you're not gonna live on. If they're wrong, if the other side is wrong, and there is a God and there is an afterlife, and they spent their entire lives not just disbelieving, but trying to get other people to disbelieve, then, and if they're wrong, then things aren't going to work out very well. At the judgment, they're going to have some incredible explaining to do. But to actually go out and try to drag people away from God, that's a really frightful thing if you're wrong about it. So now let's get into the whole apologetic and the like. And for those of us who believe, we generally jump right to Romans 1, right to these verses. It says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident within them. For God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse." So this is very important information here, because this is saying that everybody who has ever lived should, at a bare minimum, understand there's a God. And Paul wrote this roughly 1,950-ish years ago, AD 60, 65-ish. And he said creation testifies. Now, Paul didn't, he was a very educated man and very well, just Holy Spirit filled, Ruach HaKodesh, rabbi of all rabbis, except for Yeshua, right? He's rabbi. And Paul was just this great, learned man, studied in both the Roman tradition and in the truth and in Judaism. He was one of the brightest guys to ever live, but he didn't have a microscope. He didn't have a telescope. He didn't have DNA or RNA. He had his two eyes and ships and rivers and water and creation, and he could tell us that people who just had that should be able to look around and see that this planet was created on purpose. That's because it works. It works that the climate is such that life can flourish, and that we get food when we need it, rain when we need it. Uh, you know, animals. The animal kingdom is pretty well ordered, right? Regardless of what you want to call it, whether it's phylia or orders or species and stuff like that. It's all known and easy to see. And I'll bring this into the now as a child growing up out west, because I grew up out in the western side of the United States. And if you get out to central Nevada and you look at those mountains and you can just see with your eye that the stuff was made. You can just see where the water receded from the Great Flood. And what I've always marveled at since I was a child is the copper, silver, gold that are mined at elevation. So at an elevation of several thousand feet above sea level, you can see where the great big machines have gone and scraped away the side of a mountain, and there's this big green stripe, and it's parallel to the horizon, and the green stripe is copper, and you could see it with your eyes. And I've always marveled at that since I was a child, because those elements are dense. Those elements of copper, silver, and gold are much denser than the earth around them, meaning dense, meaning they're heavier per ounce, right? Heavier per gram, or however you want to call it. And these substances also have a much lower melting point than the soil that is holding them. Okay? This is very important information, because if you believe that this planet was made by accident, that it was made in a fiery inferno and accidentally started spinning and accidentally got gravity and accidentally got an atmosphere, then you cannot explain why these dense elements show up in a large deposits of them near the surface of the planet, because they should be near the core. They're heavier. So if the planet was made as a giant spinning ball of matter that cooled over time, we should not be able to mine for any of these ores. They shouldn't be close enough to the surface for us to even get to. They should be very, very far down, and they're not. So how did they get there? Right? This testifies to me, because if it was made billions of years ago, it doesn't make any sense for us to be able to access these substances. And that's my basic, pitch right there. Is just look at the planet, and you could look at any number of things to understand it. When they say that there's an evolution and that the planets evolved. The planet evolved and the species evolved and everything evolved. That doesn't make sense because you would have to have plant life evolving at the same rate as the animals that consume the plant life, as well as the animals that consume the plant life. All of creation would have had to evolve at the same rate and from different previous uh, species of their own. It doesn't make any sense. How could it all have accidentally happened? And it doesn't add up. And what you might not know is that Charles Darwin did not know about continental drift. And continental drift is that the Earth, this giant ball that we're on, has tectonic plates, so that our firmament, what we stand on, Eretz, right? The Earth, not the Earth planet, the Earth we stand on, the Eretz, the ground, right? Is actually kind of moves. It moves over time. And those of us who are creationists believe that when Yahweh confused the languages and scattered the people, that's probably when he scattered the continents and divided the people up by what we call race, which is not race because it's only one human race, but basically by different ethnicities. But to get back to this is that Charles Darwin got on ancient boats, sailing ships, and he went to different islands and he found turtles and deer on the islands. And he's like, he thought this child of a man thought that the deer and the turtle, that all these places were static, that the island had been an island forever. It had never been attached to something else. He didn't know that Europe and Eurasia was all connected at some point in time. That was only discovered in the Second World War because we had so many planes and things going on that we realized that the planet itself, the surface of the planet, is actually moving. And they figured that out. In one case, there were two astronomers, one I think in Hawaii and the other one in France or something, and they did a measurement of where they were versus where some stars were. And then when they did it again in a couple years, they found that there was a couple of inches of difference. And they got together and they're like, wait a minute, the only way this is possible is if we are moving apart. And other things happened at the same time to where continental drift was heresy in science world in 1920, 1930, and by the 50s it was common knowledge, right? Tectonics, the stuff was moving. So Charles Darwin, this child of a man, is not some super educated person. I guess he was educated. He did not understand that Europe had deer and North America had deer because they used to be connected. He thought that things evolved exactly where they were, and that's just absurd. So without understanding that, his theory of evolution is woefully inadequate and shouldn't be considered in scientific circles as being complete, because his foundation for believing in it was laughably wrong, because he didn't understand that he just thought that similar species in different continents or in different islands or whatever had evolved where they were to come up, which isn't true, right? Which we know that's not true. Those of us who are creation believers understand that all these things were made and then scattered at some point in time. So now I'm going to get into some more deeper science-y things as to why creation is true. After I stop coughing. So in the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And for most of mankind, even most highly educated people, understand that to just be the difference between dark and light. And we think of it as white light. But when he created light, light is something that is special, because it has the properties of energy and matter at the same time. And in science you have matter, which is, like I said, copper and silver, gold. Earth's crust is matter. Energy is what moves the matter, right? Whether it's an electromotive force or something like that. So moving things is energy, and then uh, crust and other tangible things are matter. Light actually has attributes of both things. It's very special in that way, in that regard. That's why light can travel, and why there's a speed of light, because light can take time to get from one place to another. Well, matter has to travel. Light is also energy, because that's why we have these photovoltaic solar panels, because light is energy that can be turned into a voltage and be used. It is also heat, so it's heat energy as well. But there's a bigger attribute to this light, because as you might start to figure, is that I've worked in the sciences in engineering for most of my secular career, and light is something I learned how to take apart. I learned how to take it apart because these elements that I'm talking about, gold, silver, molybdenum, thallium, aluminium, you can say it like a Brit, all the elements that are metals on the periodic table emit light and absorb light in a different order, in different wavelengths. And they're all very unique. So you can see on the picture that's on there, I have a little graphic. These are, things I got from royalty-free places, so they're fine to be shared. So the top graphic is talking about the visible light spectrum versus the non-visible light spectrum. And they've got it from left to right. And so what happened as we started to get science, we started to get Bunsen burners, and we started to be able to burn stuff, that people realized that when they burnt certain salts, certain elements, that it changed the color of the flame. It's called flame spectrometers. And the flame spectrometer, when you give it a sufficient amount of liquid, of liquefied yttrium or sodium, it makes make the flame red. And then as they went through and grabbed different elements through the periodic table, cadmium, nickel, and whatever, and they realized that each element emits light on unique wavelengths. So, which is amazing, because every element has a fingerprint when you get it into a form that it can either emit light or that it can absorb light. And that is what the second graphic is called a spectrometer. And the cuvette is where you would have the sample, and the sample emits the light, and then there's the exit slits, a tiny little hole that would make the light spread out and go through a lens and then go through a monochromator, which is represented as a triangle, but it's usually a grating. It's usually something that looks like steps, if you could see it. And then there's another lens that focuses the light. And I actually just explained it completely backwards. So I explained it from right to left, but it actually works the other way around. You have a light source, the light's broken into the rainbow, shined through the cuvette, and then you have a detector. And based on the change in the amount of light that has been focused and tuned to a specific wavelength, you could determine how much of an element is present. And these are the machines, instruments that I worked on for a number of years, maybe 20 years ago. Giant pieces of equipment called spectrophotometers. And I marveled, because these are huge things, and I marveled that God is telling us of his existence through these devices that we've created with our science. He's telling us that he ordered all of the elements. The elements are also ordered based upon their mass, based upon their size when they're atoms, and based upon their light emitting and their light absorption. And so that way you can see this order of the universe down to the atomic level. And it completely testifies that these things that God exists. And this is just one science that I'm talking about. If we look at biology, if we look at uh, geology, if we look at chemistry, if we look at engineering, when we get the spectra into the electromagnetic wave spectra and we pointed antennas up, we realize that the universe creates radio waves that we can listen to with our antennas. Isn't that something? We always think that we're inventing something. Mankind likes to believe that we are at the top of the food chain. But for those of us who are creationists, we understand that we are in charge of the planet, but that there's a higher authority who created the planet. So this sciencey stuff is another reason why you can't deny that this stuff was created. Because when you can get these elements, you can gather them because they're not at the Earth's core where they ought to be if it was made by accident over billions of years. And you can gather up these elements. You could see that they're different colors and different weights when they're before you even do anything with it, right? Because if you pick up a rock that's infused with gold as opposed to a rock made of the same, soil that's not, they weigh different things. And so you see that these are ordered and you start putting things together and realizing these patterns exist in every form of creation. How can you deny that it was made by an intelligent being? So now back to the Bible. In Romans 1:18 through 20 again. But this time we're going to talk about something a little bit different, right? Because we need to believe there's a God because of creation. And that's pretty simple, right? That's what Paul's talking about here, is that you need to just look around you and realize that there's an order to the universe and that it was put in place on purpose. But there's three levels to this belief system. There's atheism. Atheism means no God. It's A is negates it. It's Greek, right? Theos is God. Atheos is not God, right? So atheists believe there's no God and it's an accident. Then you have the next level, which comprises most of the people who have ever lived on the planet, which is theism, that they believe in something, whether it's a God or a pantheon of gods or a power or spirits, but they believe in a creative force. And for most of the legends, they believe that the planet was created when the gods, plural, were fighting, and they accidentally created Earth, and that we're an afterthought. But as you look at people, from antiquity who would sacrifice to volcanoes, or they would do certain things because they believed that the planet was created. And that's what Paul's talking about here, that the creation is evident, but they didn't have any means with which to know Yahweh. So they're looking around and going, we may have to do something to satisfy this God. But what they were doing was trying to make their lives peaceful. They were trying to satisfy the wrath of an unknown God in order for them to be blessed, to have good lives in this lifetime. Not everybody who believed in God believed in an afterlife. And some people believed in creation, but they believed in reincarnation. Or, like with the Sadducees, they believed in no afterlife. They believed that if you were blessed by God today, you would have a good life. And your legacy would be carried on in your ancestors. But that when you died, you went to the grave. This is similar to atheists. But that's the second kind of level to this, is that you believe in a God, but you don't, but that's where you stop. And then you do things to be blessed in this life, and your legacy is lived on through others. But for us, and the reason we evangelize is because we believe in the resurrection of the dead. And this is why it evangelical atheism makes no sense to me, because it's the opposite of what we do. We believe that God created the earth in 6 days. We believe that God sent his son so that whoever believes in him will not perish. We understand these things to be completely true, and that if you believe and obey, you have the opportunity for eternal life. And we evangelize because we want our neighbors to have that same opportunity. We want our neighbors to, and everybody who's lived, to have a good life today, because that's what following the commandments and believing in Yeshua gives you. If you follow that and understand you're a sinner and understand you need a Savior and live by the morality expressed through the Torah and the Bible at large, you'll have a good life today. And that's undeniable. The tenets of the Ten Commandments are the recipe for civilization. And the last five are something that all of civilization does. Well, most. There are some pretty brutal regimes out there. And then we believe in God because we believe in an afterlife, meaning the resurrection, and we want our neighbors to join us, which is why we evangelize, because we're spreading the gospel, the good news of the kingdom of God. And I have to end this one with the same question I asked at the beginning. What is the purpose of evangelical atheism? Why, if somebody doesn't believe in God, why would they ever have to spend any time trying to tell others about that, or trying to dissuade people from believing in God? Because if you don't believe in God, the guy next to you believes in God, and you both generally have the same kind of virtues, you can live in peace forever, and the person who doesn't believe in God can look at the person who does believe in God and go, why are they wasting their time on Shabbat? Why are they doing these things? Gosh, if only they knew that they could just do whatever they wanted to do because they're just going to die. There's no reason for evangelical atheism, spreading the bad news. And if you have a reason for that, you want to set me straight, firstcenturychristianity.net. You can give me a comment and let me know what you think. Because if you have an answer as to why people would want to evangelize atheism, I would love to hear it. That's all for today. This was supposed to be a 10-minute discussion and turned out to be another 30-minute version of a 10-minute sermon. Thank you so much for stopping by and for listening and for your support of the ministry. Wherever you're listening to this is a ministry, and we do have some bills. We did just get a place that we can rent to fellowship in every Sabbath starting in January. So if you'd like to donate, you could do that at firstcenturychristianity.net. If you don't want to donate electronically, go to firstcenturychristianity.net, contact me, and I'll give you my address. You can send checks. We are a 501c3, and it's one of the reasons for having two names. So anything you donate is tax deductible. And I want to thank you so much again for listening. And may Yahweh bless you and keep you in the name of his son, Yeshua. Have a good rest of your week.